Hello, Kuman69 here with another topic of the week for Christmas of 2016. This week I'll be talking about the various villains in the Zelda franchise. This topic was submitted by Tumblr Anon, and they asked, people often forget that Zelda has other villains besides Ganon. Veran, Agahnim, Yuga, Vaati, Zant, Ghirahim, Majora, and Demise. Though it can be argued Demise doesn't count as a possible preincarnation of Ganon, what is it that makes each of these villains interesting, or even not that interesting if you feel some are? Who is your favorite non-Ganon villain? Why are they, and what made them memorable to you? Ganon has been around since the very, very, very beginning of the Zelda franchise, all the way back in the very first one. In Ocarina of Time, we were given Ganondorf, his actual, human form, and, his original form. And we find out that he does turn into a beast. And in the Downfall timeline, that's pretty much how he ends up staying. Now, a lot of people, he's a popular villain for a good reason. He's very classic. He's like Frieza in Dragon Ball Z. While he may not be your favorite villain, he is one of the most memorable villains in the franchise. But there are a lot of them that get overlooked. Now, I can't really say too much about Veran and Vaati. I haven't played their games, honestly. I played a little bit of Four Swords Adventures, but I never actually completed the game. So I really can't say too much about them. They look kind of interesting, especially Vaati. But I never played much of the Four Swords. So I really can't say much about him. And from what I've looked up, I just don't really feel like I can talk a whole lot about him. But we do have plenty of other villains that I can talk about. First off, I want to look at Agahnim. Agahnim is from A Link to the Past, and I don't know if he could really count because he's basically just an alter ego for Ganon. He's literally just basically what was that one post on Tumblr, Countess Von Flatulence or something. It's basically what it is. He uses them to gain trust of the royal family because it didn't work last time. And he just, ends up taking control. Ultimately, it's revealed that, he's just Ganon. So I really don't think there's really much depth to Agahnim because he's not a different character. Yuga is from A Link Between Worlds, and I wouldn't say I would rank Yuga as one of my favorite villains. How do I put this? He's good for what he's supposed to be. He's your crazy villain. He has his own quirks. He's definitely quirky along the lines of like Ghirahim, but he's not really my favorite, and he's really, as a character, he's a little bit on the bland side. At least I found him to be. Hey, the fact that he ends up fusing with Ganon was a bit interesting, but as a character, he just wasn't all that inspiring to me. However, as a villain for the game, he served the role admirably, and I think he worked great as a villain. I just didn't particularly find him all that inspiring. Zant. Alright, now we're getting into some good talk here, because I got a lot to say about Zant. Zant is from Twilight Princess, and a lot of people have issue with the fact that he's basically just a spoiled man-child. I would agree, except it actually ends up making a lot of sense. You find out, when Zant was first introduced, like when we first saw him in the trailers, he looked intimidating as hell. We see him just like walking in and just forcing Zelda to surrender. And in the game, holy crap, the build-up to him is immense. Holy crap, really. He made some stupid decisions, but he forced Zelda to surrender. He literally walked into Hyrule Castle, had his beast just toss the knights all aside, and just basically walked in and says, surrender or die. That's pretty boss. That earns him some points. But ultimately, as the game goes on, you reveal that Ganondorf is the man pulling the strings, and that Zant is basically just a bratty man-child who used the power he was given from Ganondorf to gain the power he has and usurp the throne, thus kickstarting the plots of the game. Now, I have to admit, for a while I was in fact disappointed that, yeah, he's not as cool as he seemed to be, but when I replayed the game a few years back, I was looking at it and I couldn't really see anything that truly bothered me about this. Because in a lot of ways, he only starts acting like this when he starts losing control. And he shows his true self, which is just completely insane. And he has all these weird movements, the crazy, especially when he's fighting with the swords in his boss battle. He's a weird character, and he's a lot more interesting. And honestly, he's definitely a lot more likable as a villain when you go into it knowing that he's like that. Because it's... What can I compare this to? I can't think of anything to compare this to, but when you first see it, it's a shock because you don't expect that twist. But when you start looking at it again, you can see, yeah, he's really only, he's really only, what's the word? Calm and collected and mysterious, really, because he's in control. When he loses control, he loses his mind. In a lot of ways, it kind of made me think of Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender in the end of Book 3, when she basically just starts losing her mind. She goes from being a cold and calculating villain, one of the best villains in the series, to being nothing but a completely, wacko. And just totally loses her mind and all sanity. And Zant... it's weird because I kind of feel like I have an unpopular opinion on this because I actually like Zant's character as is. Not even changing it from that. I like the fact that he sees Ganondorf as a god. Because in a lot of ways he is. He does have the power of the Triforce of power. And he did give him a lot of that power. And, I mean, though, we do have to... That weird scene that isn't explained where it seems that Zant, who is already dead, snaps Ganondorf's neck, and if this metaphorical, is they supposed to have a connection due to the power he gave him? Yeah, it's something I really have to ask about Twilight Princess, because I don't think we ever get any kind of explanation on that. But regardless, I digress. Zant works for me, and mainly because it's the fact that I think the fact that you expect him to be totally serious the whole time, and the fact that he just totally goes wacko, it also sets him apart from Ganondorf because his appearance is creepy, and his appearance at first is creepy and calm and calculated, and that's kind of what Ganondorf ends up being. So, in a lot of ways, if he remained exactly the same, we would have just basically had two very similar villains, and that wouldn't be all that interesting. I like seeing Zant's, mind deteriorate and seeing him, become an even crazier villain. It worked for me. Ghirahim. Ghirahim is, if Zant is considered crazy, Ghirahim is crazy up to 11. He's weird, he's effeminate, he's making all these weird, comments. He gets really up in Link's personal space, and he has this quirky flair to him that really sets him apart from Zelda villains. Now, he makes it now. He's a lot like Zant in the fact that he's basically serving another character, and his goal is basically, serving them. But he makes that clear from the very beginning. In a lot of ways, I think this really helps, and really helps mitigate the fact that he really isn't his own character. He's just a servant. He's a sword like Fi. Ghirahim, when I first saw Ghirahim's design, I was like, really? Okay. But seeing him in action and playing the game and playing Skyward Sword, he's actually a fun villain. I'm a sucker for villains who are, almost gleefully evil. And that's Ghirahim to a T. He's so gleeful. He's so evil. And he'll do anything in order to bring his master back. Demise, who's also mentioned on this list. And he also serves very well from a gameplay perspective because, he's the first time you're really going to actually have to pay, when you're fighting a villain or a bad guy, you really have to pay attention to your sword swing. You can't just go start swinging at him. You have to hit him from a specific direction, or else he'll just block your sword with his hand because he's a sword. So yeah, he works in a lot of different ways, and sometimes when he comes in, he's just like, here, let me just make things more difficult for you, like in the, what's it called, the Ancient Cistern? I love the boss, love that dungeon. He just pops in and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to make the statue come alive and try to kill you. Well, bye. And even ultimately when he becomes a sword for Demise and, kind of ceases to exist as a character in the narrative, I liked it, and I was never bothered by that. I haven't really looked up what people's opinions of Ghirahim, but I know a lot more people like him than Zant, and I think it also helps the fact that he was very upfront about the fact that he's serving someone and basically makes it clear that he's not really a unique entity in the narrative. He basically is connected heavily to Demise. I liked Ghirahim. Honestly, his creepiness worked for him, and it really makes him stick out among a lot of the other villains, who, while Zant was creepy, he never hit the level that Ghirahim did. Because, oh gosh. Ghirahim appearing like right behind Link and sticking out his tongue going, he gives me the heebie-jeebies, but he's a villain, so it's a good thing. Sia. Now, Sia is from the non-canon game Hyrule Warriors. Still counts because it's part of the same franchise. Sia is an interesting villain because her motivation is she's got a crush on Link. And it's so ridiculous. Only Nintendo could pull something off like this and make it work. She's basically guardian of time, and she has such a huge thirst for Link that it's basically corrupting her, and she ends up purging her good stuff, Kami style from Dragon Ball, into creating two separate entities, and this is where Lana comes in. And that's utterly ridiculous. She's great because she really basically, being a unique villain in the series, and is not like Ganondorf, Zant, and Ghirahim, who are also in the game. She brings, it's weird because she just brings a whole different kind of flair to the game. And granted, since the game itself is very heavily, it's very different from your average Zelda game. It's 100% action. It's a little bit of exploration, but mostly it's just action, action, action with some strategy. I honestly think that she does a good job as the villain. She's not the most interesting. I wouldn't put her in a top 10 list of best villains in the series, because there are a lot that I like more than her. But honestly, she provides a very interesting and unique character in Zelda. Honestly, her motivation is she really, really wants to get with Link. So she's basically going to tear time apart in order to do it. Okay, let's roll with that. It also helps the fact that she has servants. Her, oh gosh dang, it's been a while since I played Hyrule Warriors. She has her dragon guy, who has the fire staff. He's a cool villain too. And then there's the wizard guy. And she basically just comes and recruits those guys. But, yeah, even if she's wearing a scantily clad outfit, I prefer the Guardian outfit, but she's an interesting character, and honestly, you can actually feel a little sorry for her. You feel some pity for her. She basically ended up corrupting herself, and when you actually go to her castle, she has nothing but statues and paintings of Link all over the place. I know there's this one room, it's literally nothing but floor to ceiling, just paint all across the walls, just paintings and pictures of Link. It's ridiculous, and it's so over the top. Holy crap. It's ridiculous, and I enjoyed it. Hyrule Warriors is all about being ridiculous, and they made it work. Majora also it's really interesting, because Zelda games always tend to try to do something at least a little bit unique with their villains. Majora is probably one of the most unique. Majora is a mask. That's why the game is called Majora's Mask. And it possesses Skull Kid and basically just wants to destroy everything. All he desires is chaos and destruction. Oh, there's no goal with him. Just Majora wants to destroy. Oh crap! He's gonna crash the moon into Termina. That's exciting. Majora, there's really not a whole lot to say, especially since Majora only really exists as a possessive, parasitic entity. It only works when it still gives off evil vibes and stuff, but mostly Majora just works off of other characters. And mainly and iconically Skull Kid. Really, there's really not a whole lot to Majora. Majora is evil, and a very fitting threat for, Majora's Mask, because there's just an evil you need to stop. You have 3 days. You need to keep traveling through those 3 days in order to stop this horrid threat. So, while I wouldn't consider Majora an interesting character, Majora is a fantastic villain, and honestly, much better. I like Majora better than Yuga. Even though Majora has less personality than Yuga. Yuga has a lot of personality, but it's weird. I just enjoy Majora more. And then Demise. Now, they did bring up the comment that the information that Demise is basically a preincarnation of Ganon. But from my perspective, when I was playing the game, I got the impression that not only is he a preincarnation of Ganon, he's a preincarnation of all their villains. Or main villains. I mean, not the ones on the list, really. But when Ganon isn't around, there was the villain from Spirit Tracks, can't remember his name, I think it started with an M. Or Vaati or something. It's weird, granted though, it is very much heavily implied to be mostly Ganondorf. Because, one, Demise actually looks kind of like Ganondorf. And two, well, his curse is that his hatred would be reborn to basically cause them turmoil in every life. That, their reincarnation would basically be nothing but tormenting them to hell, which is the reason why Ganondorf is the chosen user of the Triforce of Power. It's Ganondorf, Link, and Zelda are all tied together, and it's really interesting. Demise didn't have much presence in the story of a Skyward Sword. Now, don't get me wrong, he was in the game a lot, mostly as a gigantic blob monster. And you only see his true form, near the end of the game. But he really served his purpose. And I think it's one thing that you have to talk about a lot with these characters, especially in a video game that isn't all about the story, even if the story is important. You have to look at these characters and what they do. And for some of them, being, evil beyond compare, being so evil that his hatred is reborn as someone else who wants to kill Link and Zelda. That's pretty intense. As far as his curse goes, it is mostly Ganondorf, since Ganondorf does have heavy presence in all three timelines. But I think when Ganondorf is not there, I'd like to think he's not just Ganon, but really, it's mostly just Ganon. Yeah, now that I think about it, it mostly just makes sense that it's focused on Ganondorf, with occasional other villains, especially in times when Ganondorf is dead. Yeah, that, hatred would be reborn as someone else. I think it can work both ways, really. Who's your favorite non-Ganon villain? That's a hard one, honestly. Who's my favorite non-Ganon villain? Majora is good, but not my favorite. I like Ghirahim, but again, he's not my favorite villain. I'm going through the games in my head, trying to think. Which ones? That's a really hard choice. It's so hard for me to pick favorites, but I think maybe Zant. Yeah, really, I really like Zant's character. He's one of the few villains who actually has who not only has a personality, but also a character to him. Even if a lot of people don't like his man-childness that ends up overtaking his character as he goes completely freaking insane, I enjoyed him throughout the entirety of Twilight Princess. And also, replaying the game a few years back, I really came to appreciate the game as a whole. And really, really started liking it. I always liked Twilight Princess, but I replayed it and, I like it a lot more. And I really came to appreciate Zant. I like Zant's character. And I liked fighting him in boss battles. I like his role in the plot. I like so much about him. The aforementioned scene where he makes Zelda surrender, which honestly I think is probably his most iconic scene, probably because we saw it in the trailers. But it's just such a powerful scene that you see Zelda has a sword and she's ready to fight back, but she realizes if she does, she's basically just putting her people in more danger than needs to be. So, being smart, she drops her sword and surrenders, saying that she doesn't want to, get her people in danger, and ends up becoming captive. Yeah, so that's about it for this week's topic. Yeah, there's a lot of Zelda villains that a lot of people don't really talk about, and I get it. Ganondorf overshadows all of them, and he's memorable. He's super, super important to the plot of the series. He functions heavily, factors heavily into the lore, and he's just a lot of fun. And hell, I made a video, my first, video here was this month was all about Wind Waker's Ganondorf, which, apart from being my favorite version of Ganon, is probably my favorite villain the series has seen thus far. So yeah, it's easy to understand, but there's so many Zelda villains, and just like when I talked about other games getting overshadowed by Ocarina of Time, a lot of other villains just kind of get overshadowed by Ganon. Well, I think that's about it for this week's episode. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. If you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. If you want to submit a topic, just make sure you follow the rules below that I'll be posting on both YouTube and Tumblr, and make sure that it's a fictional topic and that it's not something super real world. And if you don't know if I know something, or if I know enough about it to do a topic, just ask and I'll tell you. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching.